There exists a hidden force, more perilous than evil itself, one that Dietrich Bonhoeffer believed was behind much of the devastation of World War II. Unlike evil, this force cannot be confronted with reason, exposed to the light, or fought head-on. It creeps in quietly, numbing people to truth and shielding them from logic. This force is stupidity. But why did Bonhoeffer consider stupidity more dangerous than evil? Why did he see it not merely as a lapse in intellect, but as a profound moral and societal crisis? In this video, I'll explore Bonhoeffer's perspective, helping you identify the signs of stupidity in others, and maybe even within yourself. Born in February 1906, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German Lutheran pastor, a neo-Orthodox theologian, an outspoken opponent of Nazism, and an active member of the resistance. For years, he worked tirelessly to change minds. He condemned the rise of hatred, the culture of blind compliance, and the public's willingness to ignore the brutality unfolding before them. Bonhoeffer believed that if he could only get people to see, if he could just help them understand, they would awaken to reality. But despite the overwhelming proof he presented, and despite the undeniable clarity of the truth, people still refused to hear him. One evening, after years spent resisting the Nazi regime, Bonhoeffer came home to find his father waiting for him, solemn and heavy-hearted. Two men were already in his room. They had come to arrest him. While imprisoned, with nothing but time to reflect, Bonhoeffer thought deeply. He had watched his homeland, a nation once celebrated for its poets and thinkers, collapse into a society ruled by fear and corruption. He had seen friends, neighbors, and even intellectuals abandon their moral compass, not because they were all inherently evil, but because they had ceased to think critically. That's when he understood the true enemy wasn't wickedness, it was stupidity. There were powerful reasons why Bonhoeffer saw stupidity as an even greater danger than evil. Evil, in his view, could be confronted. It could be named, challenged, and even overcome. Evil always leaves room for resistance, because at some level it acknowledges its own nature. Even the most depraved individuals are deep down aware that their actions are wrong. This self-awareness is what makes evil vulnerable. Evil, Bonhoeffer believed, contains the seeds of its own downfall. It leaves behind traces of unease, a gnawing guilt that can eventually be confronted and overturned. But stupidity is different. It is impervious, untouched by reason, blind to logic, and unresponsive to truth. It doesn't engage in dialogue. It simply shuts its eyes and refuses to see. You can reason with someone acting maliciously, but not with someone who is stupid. Stupid people don't acknowledge facts. They reject them outright. They don't argue. They mock. And perhaps most dangerously, they are completely convinced they are right. This is why stupidity, in Bonhoeffer's eyes, was more perilous than malice. While malice can be resisted, stupidity is impenetrable. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed a similar sentiment when he said, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." The most unsettling aspect of stupidity is that it often operates without self-awareness. People acting foolishly usually have no idea they're doing so. They're confident in their correctness, clinging to their beliefs so tightly that no evidence, no logic, no rational appeal can dislodge them. Rather than question their views, they become even more entrenched. As Mark Twain once put it, never argue with stupid people, They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. We've all met people like this, those who hide behind dismissive catchphrases any time we attempt a serious discussion. They'll say things like, "whatever," or "I don't care," as a way of sidestepping the truth and protecting themselves from facing their own ignorance. It's maddening, much like dealing with a narcissist, because change is impossible. But the danger of stupidity doesn't stop at the individual level. It spreads. Like a contagion, it infects society, seeping into communities, organizations, and systems that demand obedience. The strength of a dictator lies in the stupidity of the masses. That's why mass stupidity so often walks hand in hand with rising authoritarianism. People don't lose their intelligence. They relinquish it. They trade their autonomy for acceptance. Choosing belonging over critical thinking, they stop questioning and start repeating. And once someone gives up their own mind, there is no limit to what they can be manipulated into doing. They can commit atrocities without recognizing them as such. They can spread falsehoods, believing they're defending the truth. They can ruin lives, all the while thinking they're standing on the right side of history. Stupidity isn't just irritating, it's lethal. In the hands of those who understand how to exploit it, it becomes a weapon. And perhaps the most terrifying truth, you cannot defeat stupidity with logic. To fight it, we must first comprehend what it really is. Stupidity doesn't question itself. It feels no doubt, no guilt, no uncertainty. It marches ahead with absolute conviction, and in doing so, becomes an unstoppable force, serving whatever cause it has aligned with. Bonhoeffer witnessed this reality firsthand. He lived in a country once revered as the home of poets and philosophers, Germany, the land of Goethe, Kant, and Beethoven. Yet he watched it unravel into a society dominated by cowards and criminals. He saw ordinary citizens, many of them educated and intelligent, abandon their capacity for critical thought and submit themselves completely to the Nazi regime. This is why Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is not a failure of intellect, but a failure of character. A person can possess great mental sharpness and still act foolishly. Take Martin Heidegger, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century, who despite his brilliance pledged loyalty to the Nazi Party and remained unapologetic until his death in 1976. Intellectually gifted, yet by Bonhoeffer's definition, deeply stupid. On the other hand, someone who may not be particularly smart can still be wise, compassionate, and morally grounded. Intelligence and wisdom are not the same. As Bonhoeffer saw it, stupidity is not the absence of intelligence. It's the absence of moral courage. No one is born stupid. People become stupid. And how that transformation happens is what I'll explore next. Stupidity, at its core, is a mindset that forms when someone abdicates their responsibility to think. It's not an inherent trait, but a change, a mental shift that people allow to happen. And this change doesn't occur in isolation. It is a social phenomenon. Stupidity thrives in environments where independent thought is discouraged, where people simply follow orders, conform, and submit to prevailing narratives without question. Bonhoeffer observed how the Nazi regime turned ordinary people into unthinking followers. They were not inherently evil, nor were they necessarily unintelligent, but they stopped questioning. They let go of their ability to discern truth from falsehood. They became tools of a greater agenda. Bonhoeffer described this phenomenon as almost a sociological law. A similar transformation is depicted by George Orwell in 1984, where Big Brother brainwashed people to the point of limiting their very thoughts. The regime did not just control their actions, it made them stupid so they could no longer think properly. Bonhoeffer made the same observation. When power rises, stupidity spreads. Under the influence of authority, whether political or ideological, many people willingly relinquish their inner independence. They accept the slogans, the propaganda, the oversimplified explanations, and they no longer see the world for what it is. This is where stupidity becomes most dangerous. It is stubborn, yet passive. The stupid person does not think for themselves, yet they are fiercely convinced they are right. When confronted with facts or logic, they do not reconsider. They resist. You are not dealing with a person, you are dealing with the slogans and catchphrases that have taken possession of them. This is why Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity is harder to combat than evil. A stupid person will repeat lies even after they have been disproven. They will cling to falsehoods because they are no longer thinking for themselves. And this is precisely why a stupid person cannot simply be instructed or argued out of their stupidity. They must be liberated. Until that happens, debate is pointless. But there is a way to avoid falling into this seemingly innocent trap. If stupidity is not an intellectual deficiency, but a form of mental enslavement, then how can one avoid it? How can a person ensure they do not fall into the trap of blind conformity? This is what I will discuss, point by point. Bonhoeffer warns that people become stupid when they give up their ability to question, analyze, and think independently. The first step to avoiding stupidity is to refuse to stop thinking. Always ask questions. Challenge authority when necessary. Do not accept something as true just because it is widely believed. If an idea cannot withstand scrutiny, then it is not worth believing. Stupidity is a social phenomenon. It thrives in environments where people conform without thinking. Whenever you find yourself agreeing with a group simply because it is easier, stop and ask yourself, am I thinking for myself, or am I just going along with the crowd? History has shown that when large groups of people stop questioning, disaster follows. Do not let the comfort of belonging override the necessity of truth. This same mentality was criticized by Friedrich Nietzsche, who called it herd mentality. According to both Bonhoeffer and Nietzsche, anyone who seeks to become a true intellectual, or Nietzsche's Übermensch, must reject blind conformity. Stupidity is often the result of external influences, propaganda, misinformation, and emotional manipulation. Leaders who rely on stupidity use tactics designed to bypass critical thinking. They appeal to emotions rather than reason. They promote simplistic explanations for complex problems. They discourage independent thought and label dissent as dangerous. If an idea is presented in a way that discourages questioning, it is likely designed to manipulate, not to inform. Stupid people gravitate toward simple, black and white explanations. Reality is messy. The truth is often uncomfortable, inconvenient, and difficult to digest. So, if a solution sounds too simple, it probably is. If a leader claims that all your problems stem from a single cause, they're not telling you the truth. And if a movement demands your unconditional allegiance, it's a red flag. It's dangerous. True wisdom lies in recognizing complexity, embracing nuance, and resisting the temptation to reduce everything to easy answers. Bonhoeffer believed that stupidity isn't something that can be eliminated through education alone. It requires liberation. People ensnared by manipulation and forced conformity must be freed externally before their minds can be truly free. But even then, genuine wisdom can only emerge through internal emancipation, breaking away from fear, from blind allegiance, and from the habit of unthinking obedience. The only path to resisting stupidity is to commit oneself to a life of continuous intellectual and moral independence. This was Bonhoeffer's concept of stupidity, a powerful warning to all of us. In today's world, where misinformation runs rampant, herd mentalities dominate, and blind loyalty to political figures, ideologies, and popular narratives often goes unchallenged, his message is more urgent than ever. If we don't consciously fight to protect our ability to think independently, we won't just encounter stupidity, we will be governed by it. The choice is in our hands. Stay aware, stay thoughtful, and most importantly, stay free. Likes and subscribes are the best way to support this channel. I appreciate every single one. See you in the next video.